Between 2018 and 2019, a seismic event shook the foundations of global commerce. The United States imposed tariffs on approximately $360 billion worth of Chinese goods. This was not a minor adjustment or a routine trade dispute. It was a deliberate, large-scale economic maneuver designed to fundamentally alter the U.S.-China trading relationship. The sheer scale of these taxes sent immediate shockwaves across the globe. It signaled a new, more confrontational era in American trade policy. The move surprised not only its intended target, China, but also many of America's closest allies, who suddenly found themselves navigating a more unpredictable and turbulent economic landscape. At its core, a tariff is a remarkably simple concept. It is a tax a government places on imported goods, added when a product crosses the border. Foreign product, border plus tariff tax, higher price for the importer. If the U.S. sets a 10% tariff on a German car, the import price rises immediately. Tariffs make foreign goods pricier and domestic goods relatively more competitive. They are also leverage in negotiations, economic statecraft without force. But who pays? Officially the importer, yet costs cascade through the chain. Importers can absorb costs, pass them on to wholesalers, retailers, consumers, or pressure foreign suppliers. In practice, the burden is shared, but consumers almost always pay part. Protecting steel raises input costs for cars, bridges, and appliances, forcing tough price or investment decisions. The Trump administration's tariff wave stemmed from grievances with China's economic policies. Washington argued China tilted the playing field against U.S. companies and workers. High on the list, intellectual property theft, trade secrets, patents, and copyrighted material. Forced technology transfer claims alleged firms had to share software and processes to access China's market. Officials said this let China absorb U.S. ingenuity and build competitors faster. Strategy: make Chinese imports costlier to spur U.S. buying at home and force Beijing to negotiate. Falling U.S. imports from China and shifting supply lines would raise pressure. This broke from prior reliance on dialogue and WTO actions deemed too slow. Tariffs served as economic shock therapy to break a stalemate and deter predatory practices. The message: tolerate near-term disruption for a long-term fairer system. While China was the principal target, the economic shrapnel spread widely. Tariffs hit steel and aluminum from the EU, Canada, and Mexico. The move was justified on national security grounds to protect critical metals. Allies met the rationale with skepticism and indignation. Partners who stood alongside the U.S. saw a security ally treating them like rivals. They expected consultation and recourse through established channels. Instead, the same blunt instrument was used on friends and a strategic competitor alike. Unilateral action eroded decades of trust built on predictability and mutual respect. If trade could shift unpredictably, what about a future security crisis? The snub created fissures in the Western alliance when unity was needed most. Confusion turned to anger, and then to retaliation. Disunity weakened the West's collective bargaining power. American tariffs did not exist in a vacuum. In a connected world, action triggers reaction, a classic tit-for-tat escalation. China retaliated with tariffs on a wide range of American products. Beijing chose goods to maximize political and economic pain: soybeans, pork, automobiles. The EU, Canada, and Mexico also moved, taxing iconic U.S. products. Harley-Davidson motorcycles, bourbon whiskey, and Levi's jeans were in the crosshairs. Targets overlapped with the home states of influential leaders to spur domestic pressure. Trade flows slowed, costs and uncertainty surged. U.S. farmers lost reliable markets as prices rose abroad and buyers pivoted. European consumers faced higher prices and chose other brands. Investment paused in the fog of uncertainty. One set of tariffs unleashed a damaging chain reaction. When a tariff hits, its cost embeds into the economy. Consider tariffs on Chinese-made washers. Importers pay at the border. To preserve margins, retail prices rise. Households feel the hit as everyday goods get more expensive. Manufacturers relying on imported steel face higher input costs for car parts and heavy equipment. Firms either absorb the cost, cutting investment and hiring, or pass it on and risk losing competitiveness and sales. In extreme cases, scalebacks, reduced hours, even closures. Retaliation battered farmers, especially soybean growers once reliant on China. As prices rose in China, buyers pivoted to Brazil and Argentina. U.S. demand plummeted, surpluses swelled, finances strained. A few industries gained, but many more paid through higher costs, lost sales, and uncertainty. Modern manufacturing is a global puzzle. A phone or a car is rarely made in one country. A chip might be designed in the United States, fabricated in Taiwan, tested in Malaysia, then installed in China. Tariffs struck this delicate web, destabilizing carefully tuned chains. A 25% hit on a critical component forces urgent recalculation. Firms searched for alternatives: Vietnam, Mexico, Thailand, diversifying supply. But vetting quality, contracting, and logistics takes time and money. Years and millions can be required to move. Some reshored to the US or nearshored to Mexico, but capacity and ecosystems lagged. Mindsets shifted from lowest cost to resilience, maintain presence in China, and develop a second source, hedge against tariffs, pandemics, and geopolitical shocks. The tariff battles of 2018 to 2019 did more than disrupt goods. They cracked foundations of the post-World War II trading system centered on the WTO. Unilateral tariffs showed rules could be bypassed, undermining institutions. Trust eroded between nations that relied on U.S. stewardship. Countries accelerated new deals. The CPTPP moved forward without the United States. Asia pushed the RCEP, the world's largest bloc, again without U.S. participation. The U.S. pursued USMCA and more bilateral or regional arrangements. The era of sweeping global rounds faded. Blocs and secure supply chains took focus. Trade alliances reshaped, and with them, global influence for years to come. When the dust settles, the tally isn't in ledgers, it's in people's lives. A soybean farmer faces unsold crops and mounting debt. A factory worker loses overtime as steel costs bite. An entrepreneur pays 25% more for components and cuts staff. There were gains too. Some mills hired and new plants opened. But analyses show gains often offset by losses elsewhere. Tariffs are blunt and unpredictable, often raising consumer costs. Treat allies as partners. Prioritize transparency and institutions like the WTO. Coordinate when action is necessary. Cooperative, rules-based trade over chaotic shocks.